everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful day so far. Today I'm going to be doing my August wrap up, and I'm also going to be doing my September TBR as well. I'm really excited for everything that I am going to be talking about and reading. But first, I'm going to let you know that I am going to be linking every single book that I talk about down below. Go through everything in order, I think. I think that might be the most reasonable thing to do. So we're going to get started with that. So the first book that I wanted to talk about, this book, we're going to start this off on like a really strong note because this is my 5-star read for the month. I can't tell you how much I love this book because I'm just going to go on and on about how much I love this book. So I'm really sorry if you don't like rants. But this was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This one was my 5-star read for this month. But this book is about our protagonist named Addie, or Angeline LaRue. And she is a daughter of a woodmaker back in 18th century France, so about like the 1700s-ish. And she is supposed to marry this man that she like really doesn't want to marry. She goes on and on about how she doesn't want to go to the wedding, she doesn't want to attend the wedding, she doesn't want to get married, she wants to live her life. And a family friend of hers introduces her to praying to gods, and there's like the good gods and then there's also the bad gods. And essentially she tells her, like, don't pray to the bad gods though, because those are gonna curse you and you're gonna be screwed for the rest of your life. So what happens is she ends up praying to one of the bad gods, and then this bad god like appears and asks her what her like deepest desires are. And then she ends up making a deal with this person who ends up appearing a few times later in the book. But basically the deal is that she gets to live forever. However, but in terms of her being free, however, she is not going to be remembered by anybody. So nobody's going to know who she is. People will meet her and see her and like talk to her and stuff, but they won't know who she is. So if they turn their back or they close the door or something, they're not going to remember who she is. So she makes this deal, and then her life is just like, it's not ideal. So she meets all of these people, and she kind of like talks about how she like knows these people and how these people have like impacted her life and all that kind of stuff. But it's really sad for her because they don't remember her and they don't know who she is. So she's very like, the whole time I just like, I feel for her, and I feel for her struggle, because it's like the worst thing in the world to try and like build relationships with people and then they just don't know who you are after like a certain amount of time, or like they don't know who you are as soon as they don't see you anymore. And it's basically just her working through everything. And she ends up meeting somebody who, I don't want to spoil it too much, but this person ends up remembering her, and there's like a little bit of a romance in this novel as well. And there's a lot of representation of like depression, and there's also some LGBTQ representation in this book as well, which is really awesome. And that makes me really happy because one of the characters is pansexual, and then Addie gets kind of into like this very like sapphic romance as well, which is really cool. What really sold it for me for that 5-star rating was actually the ending. I know that a lot of people go on and on about how the beginning's really slow and it's just boring and it's unnecessary, but like I really liked the beginning. I thought it was wonderful, and it really helped me really understand Addie's situation and what she's going through. But back onto the last 100 pages, there was just so much happening, and it all kind of like wrapped everything up really nicely, and it was something that I just totally wasn't expecting either. But I really love this book, and I'm definitely going to be rereading this in the future. There's no doubt about that. I would highly recommend this. This book is beautiful. It's sad, but it's also just like, it's wonderful, and I would strongly suggest you buy it. It is just lovely. And like, I mean, I didn't do the audiobook because I don't really do audiobooks. I actually just like to read like physical books, and this was just like a wonderful, like just sifting through. It was great. Like, I loved this book, so I would highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite books that I've read this year, no doubt. So read it. You have to. You have no choice. You have to read this book. It's Mwah, beautiful. And then the next book that I read last month is a romance, and this one I have been trying to get my hands on for the longest time. I found it and I was really excited. So this book I heard a lot of really good things about, and I just really wanted to read it. And I love me like a really lighthearted romance, so I thought like after reading Addie LaRue, I should just read something lighthearted. So I decided to start this book, and I finished it in a couple days, so you know it was a good one when. But this is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. This one is a workplace enemies to lovers romance, I guess. It's kind of like an enemies to lovers, I don't really know. Or like a rivals to lovers, I'm not exactly sure, but basically it's about these two co-workers. One's named Lucy, the other one's named Joshua. They both work at this publishing firm, and Lucy is very like bubbly, she's very outgoing, she's very just like whimsical. She has this really interesting backstory with her parents and like strawberry farms and stuff. I think it's really cute. And then there's Joshua, who's very work-oriented, very serious. He has a lot of these like expectations from like his parents and stuff, and you know, he basically just wants to achieve things and he wants to like get stuff done. So he's like a very serious person, and Lucy doesn't like that about him, so they end up just like not really liking each other very much, and they don't really get along very well. So there's just a lot of like back and forth throughout the novel about them just like they just don't really like each other. And then they end up sort of like getting into the situation where they're vying for the same job promotion, and they're sort of I don't want to say they're forced to work together because they don't really work together, but it sort of starts to bring them closer together, if that makes sense. And they end up starting like this relationship and this romance, and I personally really liked the way that this was written. I know that some people find like comedy romance type of novels very like immature or something like that. I don't think they are. I think they're wonderful and just like mwah, so good. And I really enjoyed their relationship and the banter that was kind of like back and forth. I think it made it really exciting. There's a lot of chemistry between them. Lucy, like throughout this whole novel, was very like resistant to the romance. Like she was like, nope, don't want to do it. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to do it. No. And they kept like having these moments where they would like get themselves into like, you know, very intimate situations, and then it just like it kept getting like more and more like spicy, and it was wonderful. And then I really liked the fact that Sally Thorne didn't put like spice like right in like the beginning of the book, because I find that if you do that, it just ruins everything for me. And I don't know about you, but I would much rather have it like a little bit later in the book, which is really nice. It's more like a slow burn, and this was definitely like a slow burn, and it was wonderful. It was really good. I give it 4 out of 5 stars. It's it didn't give me that 5-star feel, but I still really enjoyed this book, and I would highly recommend it to anybody who really loves like a really nice lighthearted comedy romance. It was great. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. So that is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. And then the next book that I read this one for a book club, and I really enjoyed this book. I wanted to read this book for a while, and I had actually suggested it in the book club group, and we ended up picking that one to read, and it was really exciting. So this book, I think it's going to be a classic in the next like 100 years. Like I'm just going to put that out there because I really think it will be, because it's such a good book. And then when I finished it, I bought another book by this author, and I am planning on reading that very soon. But this book is called The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This book I gave 4 out of 5 stars as well. And the only reason that I gave it 4 out of 5 stars is because I really didn't like the romance between Celia and Marco, sorry. I don't know why I call him Marcus, but it's Marco. But essentially this book is about a traveling circus. There's a lot of like time jumps. There's a lot of like place jumps too. But the way that Erin Morgenstern wrote about the circus and the way that it like fits into the world, it's just, oh, it was beautiful. It was wonderful, and you could really picture the vibes and like the whimsical nature of it. I really enjoyed Bailey as a character. He's one of the I guess one of the protagonists, one is sort of like the side characters, I guess. And I really liked him because he was sort of like an outsider looking in, and I loved his relationship between and the Murray twins. They're like part of the circus, and how that sort of like manifested and how they kind of like built this really lovely friendship. And how Bailey just sort of like explores everything and really just gets into like this really interesting predicament of like magic and like reality, and how his parents want him to go off to university, but he doesn't want to. I didn't really necessarily enjoy the romance between Celia and Marcus. I just felt like it was really unimportant, and just like, I didn't find it very necessary. And I feel like it would have been better if they were just already together and it was like more of like a different relationship dynamic, in my opinion anyways. But that's the only reason I gave it 4 stars, but otherwise I would have given this like 5 stars easily. But I just didn't like the romance. I just thought it was unnecessary to the plot. I just didn't think it really added anything interesting. But I really, really loved this book though. I would strongly suggest you purchase this book and like get lost in the magic, because it's just beautiful. The writing is great. Everything except for Celia and Marco's romance is just like so good. I loved how like this wasn't so fast paced. It was just very like, here is the circus, let me tell you about the circus. It was very like, it was told in a mode of storytelling that I really, really loved, and I'm just so happy that I read this book. I also loved all the Shakespeare references in this. Like, it was just so good. And as a fan of Shakespeare, it's just nice to see that Shakespeare is just like referenced in everything. Like, they reference Hamlet, they reference Macbeth, they reference a little bit of Romeo and Juliet. Like, there's a lot of like plays that get to mention, which is really, really nice. And also like some of the elements of this also sort of reminded me of A Midsummer Night's Dream, which is like a comedy, not necessarily a tragedy, because it's definitely not a tragedy, but it like the whimsicality of it and the force and stuff like that. It's wonderful. It's really lovely. There's really no like straight plot line, which is really nice. I just liked the world building. That's what I came for when I read this book, and I am just so happy that I have it, and now it is on my shelf and I'm going to keep it for the rest of my life. So yeah, that is The Night Circus. Really, really liked it. Strongly would recommend. And then right after, I didn't have a lot of time left in August by the time I finished it, because it took me a while to read it. So I wanted something else that was really, really easy, a little more summary, just so I can like, read an easy romance and be happy. So the next book is a romance. But this book, a lot of people were talking about on Book Talk, BookTube, everywhere. And this is Beach Read by Emily Henry. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars as well. I really enjoyed this book. This book was wonderful. It was great. So basically it is about 2 authors named January and Augustus. And they are like former, I guess, like college classmates, and like college, like they knew each other in college essentially. And what happens is they kind of like grow apart, and then January experiences like a tragedy in her family, and she finds out a lot of like family secrets that like really, really stress her out, and you can see it like throughout the novel. And then she ends up meeting Augustus again, and they sort of like reconnect and all that kind of stuff. And she is very like closed off towards him. He's also like a little closed off towards her as well. And they are both experiencing like this kind of very intense writer's block, and they end up making this deal where they're going to switch genres and write a book about like in each other's genre, And Augustus writes literary fiction, and January, she writes romance novels. And it's really interesting to see their little dynamic and how that sort of manifests itself, because they start to kind of like feel very unsure about each other, and then they sort of build this really lovely friendship at first, and then it kind of turns into like this really wonderful steamy romance. It was a little bit deeper than something like The Hating Game, where it's very just like, boom, done, here's your romance, you're good to go. But this one was very like, it was definitely deeper. They clearly had a lot of love for each other, which was wonderful to see. It still was a little bit cliche, but like you can expect that from a romance novel, like duh. But it was a lovely read. I really loved like the plot in it and how it was a little bit slower, but it was still very interesting and very like addicting to get into. And I just loved the way that Emily Henry wrote everything. I know that there were some people that thought that like January and Augustus were like very immature characters, which I totally do not agree with. I think that if you're going through things and you have a lot of like stuff going on in your life, like you're gonna be bound to like show off some stress, if you know what I mean. So I really liked this book. I finished it in 2 days. I would definitely reread this, to be perfectly honest, because it was just a wonderful, lovely romance, and I would strongly suggest you pick up just a nice lighthearted romance like this one, and you will be like set for the rest of your life. So yeah. And then the last book, and I'm really sorry to be ending this on a little bit of a sour note, but this is a book that I just like, I have a lot of feelings towards it, and I just want to get them out there so like people know that I really didn't like this book. And I feel so bad because I really wanted to like this book. This book had so much potential, and it just kind of, it really fell flat for me. I didn't find the plot like interesting. I didn't find anything about it, just like, I didn't like it. I didn't like it. And I'm going to give you some very specific reasons why. This is the only YA book that I read this month. The fact that it was YA didn't really contribute to anything, but I'm going to tell you what it was. But this is The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. And this one is it's supposed to be a high fantasy where you have this female protagonist who's very badass, kind of has like a lot going for her, but essentially she grows up in like this village, and like you don't know where the village is. Like, I don't know where the village is. So that was like a huge red flag. I'm like, where is this village? What's it called? Like, what's it about? Like, you have to, okay, now I'm gonna start ranting, but basically, it's supposed to be set in a village, and this village, does like this ritual where they, they want to test to see if women are pure enough. And our protagonist is found out to not be so pure, so she basically gets sentenced to like this death or something like that. And honestly, like the lack of world building and the lack of stable plot and like the lack of like anything in this book really just like set me off, and I'm really sad to say that I really didn't like this book. I didn't know what was happening half the time. I found the plot just very like non-existent. Like, I didn't like it. This book had so much potential to have like this wonderfully badass character who could have just like done all of these really cool things. There was no like context, there was no explanations, there was no like I get that it's a YA novel, but you gotta world build, and you have to tell me like what is happening like around people, if you know what I mean. Because like, I don't want to read about something where I just have to assume where everything is, if you know what I mean. And I hated it. I didn't like it. It was just like, it was bland. The plot was terrible. I feel really bad for saying that, because like a lot of people actually really enjoy this book, but I just like, the lack of world building and the just general inconsistencies in this book just turned me off from it, and I would strongly suggest not reading this. I really didn't like it. And I gave it 2 out of 5 because of the potential that it had. I would have given it a 1, but honestly, like, I just feel bad for giving it a 1, so I'm just going to give it a 2 and just leave it at that. But yeah, that is this one, and I'm sorry to be ending that on a very sour note, but the good thing is that I enjoyed the majority of the books that I read last month. And like I said, I'll link them all down below in case you would like to read the synopses. I didn't write reviews for all of them because I was just like, I need to get through these books really fast, but I have my video review, so we're good to go. But anyways, we're going to move on to the September TBR that I've actually already started, which I'm really excited about. So for this particular TBR, I have a few really cool things happening. So the first thing is that I have 3 romance novels because I wanted to kind of divide everything up, so then that way I have like fluffiness to read if I feel like reading fluffiness. I also have 1 high fantasy, 2 like sort of sci-fi books, and then I have 1 like drama or like literary thriller. I'm not exactly sure what to place one of the books in for the category, but I also have a lot of other genres that I'm thinking that it could fall in. But anyways, I'm really excited about all these books. They're good. I've heard a lot of good things about a lot of them, so I'm like very highly convinced. But the first book that I'm going to be reading, or actually I've already started, I'm about a third of the way through, and that is Klara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. This one is about, like, I don't want to spoil it too much, but basically it's about this AI named Klara, and it's sort of set in like a futuristic world where people will purchase what's called artificial friends. So like they have somebody to talk to, and Klara is like an artificial intelligence. There's a lot of like talk about what it means to be human and what it means to love people and what it means to care for people. And so far I'm really enjoying this book. Like I said, I'm only a third of the way through, so I don't have complete thoughts about it, but this one won the Nobel Prize in Literature, which is really exciting. So I am hoping that I like the rest of it, of what I've read so far. It's been amazing. And I really just enjoyed the idea of it. And also this is a book club pick for the book club that I'm in. So, you know, we're going to be discussing this at the end of the month and I'm really excited for it. So that's the first book. And then the next book that I'm going to be reading is a romance novel. This one I kind of picked up on a whim, and I'm like, I just need more romance novels because I just like felt like I didn't have enough romance novels. So bought more romance novels, but this one is Heartbreak for Hire by Sonia Hartl, and this one is a workplace romance. I'm not exactly sure about like the whole plot line, but what I do know is that there's like this service called Heartbreak for Hire, and I know that there's a lot of like interesting like office dynamics, and there's like some like romance, and that there's a little bit of like jealousy or something. I'm not exactly sure, but I've heard that it's a really wonderful romance, and I'm really excited to pick this one up once I am actually able to pick it up. So that is Heartbreak for Hire. And then the next book that I want to read is part of a 3-part series, I guess. This one a lot of people have been talking about, so I was like, I'm just going to grab the first book, see if I like the first book, and if I like the first book, I'll grab the next book. And that is Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. This one is about one of the Brown sisters named Chloe, because I believe that there's a couple other sisters. I forget their names now, but this one's Chloe, and there's like anxiety representation, there's LGBTQ representation, there's a lot of talk about like race and class and gender and stuff, which I'm really excited about. So I think there's going to be like, I'm hoping that there's a lot of like issues popping up in terms of like what's going on in the world, and I'm looking forward to something a little bit deeper in terms of romance. I know that it is a romance novel, so I'm not expecting too much like deepness. However, like I've heard that there's a lot of really lovely moments and a lot of really like cute, sweet moments as well. And I'm really excited to read this one. And I have I'm not going to say I have high expectations for it, and I also don't want to say I have low expectations for it, but I'm hoping that I really enjoy it. So that is that one. And then the last romance novel that I have on my TBR is The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. This one I picked up on a whim, and I'm really excited to read it. But basically, I believe this is about like this service where you like send your DNA off, and it matches you with somebody based on your DNA. And turns out our protagonist is matched with the founder of the Soulmate Equation. That's what the company's called, I guess. And it's supposed to be like this really cute romance, and I'm here for it. I love me just like a nice, simple, wonderful romance. Not that I don't like things that are deeper, as I just said, but I've heard a lot of good things about this book. I don't know too much about the plot, and I kind of want to go into most of these books blind, so here we are. But yeah, that is the next book I'm reading. And then this particular book I am so excited about. This one is supposed to be a high fantasy, and it's actually by an Indigenous author, which I'm really excited about because I want to really make a point to diversify my reading every single month, and I want to make sure that I'm not just reading from white people. I want to read from people of color, and I want to make sure that I'm really making a point to diversify my reading and diversify my palette, because I think it's really, really important to be aware of those things and to be aware of what you're reading. But this one I'm so excited about. This one is a high fantasy, and I've heard a lot of wonderful things about this book. And I know this is like the first book in like a series, I think, and I don't think the second book is out quite yet, but I have the first book. So this is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse, and this is a high fantasy set, I believe in pre-Columbian Americas. I don't know much else about it, but what I do know is that there's a lot of witchcraft, there's a lot of magic, there's a lot of like mystical creatures and stuff, which I'm really excited about. I believe a lot of it's based on indigenous mythology, or indigenous creation story, and I'm really excited about this one. I'm familiar with some of it because I learned a little bit about it like when I was in school and stuff, so like I know some, I don't know all of it, but I'm really excited to dive into this one. This one just looks wonderful and so good, and like I'm just really excited for it. So I'm probably going to read this right after I finish Klara and the Sun. I don't know, but I'm really excited to read this one. So that is Black Sun. And then the next book that I have is my only YA for this month that I've also heard so many good things about. So I'm like really, really excited to read this one. But this one is The Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Bouley. And this is I think it's like a thriller sci-fi book. I'm not exactly sure what to call it because it's like a mishmash of a lot of different genres kind of mushed up together. So I would say it's a little bit more of a contemporary than anything else, but we'll see what happens. But this is about our protagonist, Donis Fontaine, and she is Ojibwe, and she's very connected to her culture, but also she has become a little bit westernized as well, and she doesn't quite fit into everything in her life, and so she's kind of like stuck between like two different worlds. And then I guess she gets caught up in like this really interesting like FBI investigation that she's helping out with, and there's also a little bit of romance in it, but I don't think it's like a central plot line, which is great, because I mean, as much as I love a romance novel, sometimes it's nice to have a book that like doesn't have that, so I like to kind of throw in a bit of variety in there. But I'm really excited about this book. I think it's going to be really good. I'm just like, I have high hopes, and I'm hoping that I rate this 5 stars because it looks so good. So there's that one. And then the next book that I have, this one's like a drama thriller. I'm not exactly sure what to call it. I know that this author wrote Mexican Gothic, which I didn't realize until I picked this up, but I thought it was a debut novel, so I think in my book haul I call it a debut novel, but it's not. But anyways, this is Velvet Was the Night by Silvia Moreno Garcia. And this is a new release, though. This is a new release. And this one, I believe, is about, it's set in 1970s Mexico City, and it's about the secretary who is living in a lot of political unrest. There's a lot of, like, things happening in Mexico City, so just a lot of just, like, social change and social injustices, and it's basically just kind of touching on crime and mafia. I think mafia-ish cartels. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm really excited to read it. It looks like it's going to be really fast-paced, judging by the fact that it's like not even 300 pages, because it's a short one. So I'm expecting a lot packed into this one. I'll let you know my thoughts because there's not a lot of reviews on this, because obviously this is like a very, very new book. But yeah, we're reading this one too. And then the last book that's on my TBR for this month is a book that I bought way back in July. And I believe when I did the haul, I said that it was really funny because I picked up the book because the title I just thought was absolutely hilarious, but it's definitely not going to be a comedy novel. But this is The End of Men by Christina Sweeney Baird, and this one has some slight references to the COVID-19 pandemic, which is crazy. Because I know that in the acknowledgements, she said that it's not necessarily like directly referencing COVID, but like it could. But it's set in 2025, so 4 years from now. So close to home, but it's set in Ireland, I believe, right? Scotland, not Ireland, Scotland. But there's this mysterious virus that is going around killing and making men sick. It's not affecting women, it's only affecting men, and women are like the only people that can like save the world, I guess, which I think is really dope. And our main protagonist is a doctor who is basically telling everybody like, hey, this is serious, like you got to pay attention to this, and nobody believes her, and then they end up having to go into this lockdown, and it kind of like jumps back and forth between like different like times and places and stuff. It's not like too much of a time jump because they're all kind of set in like the same year, which I think is good. But I'm really excited for this book. I think it'll be really good, and I'm just here for it. So yeah, that, my friends, is the video. Yay! So I'll link every single book that I talked about down below in case you're interested. I am now going to edit this and post this as fast as I can because I feel like it's a little bit late, but anyways, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!